before we get started, so I'm going to go through just kind of what happens in Act One, in the beginning, and then towards the end, I'm gonna go over the questions. So if you have that, if you have something, a piece of paper, if you just like kind of started it, then at the end, you're gonna write it down, and then tomorrow, and for the weekend, I'm actually gonna open up the Act One quiz for you to do on your own time, and obviously you can use any notes you do from class period to kind of finish it. So if you have a piece of paper or you did like questions on a piece of paper, you definitely get that out. But we'll get started right now. Okay. So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, it's only 6 of us, so if you guys have any questions, just ask me. Okay, so Act 1 summary analysis. So we're looking at Act 1. If you actually go on YouTube, so usually I like to read the act and show you guys how it looks, and then you get to watch the video in class. If you have, I mean, you can actually find it on YouTube. You type in the Crucible movie, you can watch part of it. They do 90% good job to show you what happens. There are some things that happens in the movie that doesn't happen in the play, but for the most part, it's actually pretty good. It stars Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder is the mom in Stranger Things. If you've seen Stranger Things, Will's mom. All right, so the story, the setting is Salem, Massachusetts, 1692. We learned about the characters before, and we learned about the actual events in a previous discussion post. So we get to the very beginning of the play, and the way plays work, it's usually set up in one setting, right? There's one area, and the setting for Act 1. I'm actually gonna meet you guys for now, just so I don't get any feedback from the way things are working. Okay, going back. Okay, so in the beginning, this girl on the big screen is Abigail, and you see on the little box right there, we have Betty. She is sick, and we have Reverend Paris. Those are key characters that you see in the beginning of the play. In the very beginning, Betty Paris has fallen into a strange coma. Around her are her father, the minister of the town, Salem, the 17-year-old niece, Abigail Williams, and his slave, an African, not from Africa, but from Barbados, Tituba. So when Tituba asks if Betty will be all right, Paris yells at her to get out of the room. So at the very beginning, you kind of learn about the characters. First off, you learn about Paris. Paris' treatment of Tituba reveals his angry and selfish character. He's an angry and selfish person. And at the end of this, we'll go over the questions. And if you have any questions about this later on, I put this inside folders, one of the folders. This instance also shows that Tituba is powerless. She's entirely at her master's command. So several things you learn early on. The conflict of the play is that Betty Paris is sick. We wouldn't know why. Paris is angry at something, and he's just a selfish character. Next thing we know, we find out that the night before, the girls in the town were found dancing. They were dancing with Tituba inside the forest. And this is a big no-no, because dancing in Puritan culture is not permitted. The only thing you could do in Puritan culture is read the Bible. And that's like the key thing. So they're dancing the day before. This happens before the play begins, and we know that happens the day before. Paris, the father of Betty and the uncle of Abigail, catches them. So that's what we know in the background. All right, so Paris goes off, and then a bunch of the girls in town, the ones that were there dancing, go to check on Betty's bed. When Mercy and Abigail are alone, Abigail tries desperately to wake Betty. She shakes Betty, right? Tries to get her up. At the same time, she and Mercy try to get their story straight. They all dance, and Ruth and Tituba conjured spirits. All right, so they're talking about their time the day before where they're conjuring spirits. Abigail tells Mercy that Paris saw her naked. So someone was like running around naked. Actually, if you watch the movie, the first like minute you see like someone running around naked. Another girl, Mary Warren. Mary Warren, keep in mind, she's a very important character in the story. She runs in. She's terrified. So Mary Warren's more of like a nervous girl. She's actually the maid of the Proctor family that we'll meet in a bit. She's terrified, and she says we have to confess because the penalty for witchcraft is hanging. But if they confess they were just dancing, they'll just be whipped. So that's a key thing. If they confess now, only thing that will happen is that they'll get whips. They'll get maybe hit a little bit. But in other towns in the same time period, if you're accused of witchcraft, of using witchcraft, you're hung, you're killed. During this important scene, Abigail establishes that she is a liar and also the leader of the little girls. And Mary is frightened of Abigail, as most of the girls are, because Abigail is 17 and the rest of the girls are probably like in the range of about 10 to 15. So she's like the queen bee. If you've ever seen Mean Girls, she's like the leader. So it's obvious Mary Warren at least believes there wasn't any real witchcraft, and so it's clear that none of the girls thinks there's actual witchcraft happening. They were just dancing. But yeah, the night before, as I showed you in the picture, and usually you see in the play, they show the scene where they were dancing and stuff, and around like a pot. So they were doing something, but they don't think they're doing actual real witchcraft. So next scene. So in the film, it's a little different, but in the play, obviously, when you're in a play, it all happens in one section. Everyone leaves the room, and John Proctor comes in. And then in this scene, it's kind of awkward. It's kind of this weird moment between John Proctor. We know their ages. John Proctor is about 44 years old. Abigail is 17. And we find out, bombshell, they had an affair last year before the play starts. So we know they have history together. Not only did they have an affair, they had an affair when Elizabeth, John's wife, was sick. She was almost going to die. And in his time of weakness and her weakness, he had an affair. At that time period, Abigail was their maid. So when Elizabeth, the wife, found out, she kicked him out. So when he's alone with Abigail, Proctor mentions the town's rumor of witchcraft. So everyone in town thinks that Betty Paris, the girl that's sick right now, was affected by some sort of loose witchcraft. In this time period that is run by radical Christians, radical religious people, they believe that witchcraft, they believe that the devil is a real thing. Remember that sermon we looked at, Sinners in Hands of Angry God. They believe that the God, the devil, that's the religious sayings are actual physical beings in the world. So John Proctor mentions that people think it's witchcraft. Abigail, in Act 1, she dismisses this. She says, no, we're just dancing. There's no actual witchcraft. And they kind of have like this fun moment. In the movie, they kiss. In the play, they kind of just like hug and like hold hands or something. Well, not hold hands, but embrace. Abigail says that they were dancing and Betty just fainted. So Proctor smiles and says, you're wicked yet, aren't you? Abigail steps even closer and asks for a soft word. So a soft word, and this is a question asked later on, it means a kiss. So she wants a kiss in the play. In the actual play, we're not sure if she gets it, but in the movie, they actually like there's a scene right here. They embrace and they make out, which is what happens. So a soft word. She's like, "Oh, give me a soft word, John." And so we know that it's slang. You mean like a kiss, or she can say something like, "You're nice to me." She insists he still loves her. Proctor admits he has some feelings. So he, even at the beginning of the play, he has some feelings for Abigail, but says the affair is over. Abigail hurts and angry, insults Elizabeth, but John Proctor starts yelling at her and says, you live Elizabeth out of this." So we find out early on another conflict. We know that Abigail, she believes that there was a witchcraft. Number two, there is a tension between Abigail and John Proctor. They had history together, and Abigail still has feelings, and John kind of still has feelings, but no one in town besides Elizabeth knows the truth. There is some rumors about John Proctor and Abigail, but we're not really sure what happened. The town doesn't know what happened. All right. Analysis of that. Proctor's outward immorality hides his immoral thoughts and actions. Yet, Proctor's self-hatred regarding his affair of Abigail actually proves his morality. He hates himself for being immoral. It is now clear that Abigail wanted to kill Elizabeth Proctor to have her teenage crush to herself. So we find out that during their dancing scene, the dancing, which would happen in the forest, people are kind of hanging out and they're doing like typical boy things. If you watch the movie, you see that they're like making charms to get boys to like them. Like Mary Warren's like, "There's this boy," and Mercy's like, "There's this boy." But obviously, now that we know, Abigail actually tried to do like a fake curse on Elizabeth Proctor, try to get her killed. Even though it's fake witchcraft, she tried to get her killed, saying, "Make a charm to kill Elizabeth Proctor." So Betty actually wakes up in the scene when all the people are gone and it's just the girls, and we find out that Betty was just pretending to be sick. So in this part, she was pretending to be sick, but she doesn't want to get up because she knows she'll be in trouble. So she actually wakes up and starts screaming out the window. Everyone's at church and they come and they see her screaming, and she's just yelling nonsense like, "I want to see my mom." And even though her mom had already died, it's in real life she had a fever and she was kind of sick. So this time something could have been affecting her, but at the same time she was pretending. So the town goes crazy because of all this stuff happening. You see in this big picture in the guy in the hat, all the way on the left side, his name is Reverend John Hale. He is essentially a witch hunter. He's a reverend that specializes in witchcraft, and he comes from a different town. And because he comes into the town of Salem, everyone starts as being hysterical. The word hysteria is a very key thing. That's what people uses. Fear takes over and starts blaming things. A lot of people answer the discussion post about Salem witch trials and learn the word hysteria. Something compared to is now like the coronavirus. People are scared. People walk around with hazmat suits and masks and everything. That is hysteria. You're fearful of something. So Hale comes, and you see in the top right corner, the angry looking guy, that's Thomas Putnam. In the bottom right, that's Reverend Paris. So we know that the town disagrees. They don't believe that Reverend Hale should be here. The leaders are arguing. A dispute erupts between Mr. Putnam, Mrs. Putnam, Rebecca Nurse, and Paris about town politics and grievances. So you find out in the first act that Proctor, Putnam, and Rebecca Nurse have disputes and arguments over lands. Like they want to buy certain lands, but they're arguing over each other. And Paris, these are the leaders of town, and they argue with each other. The argument covers everything from Putnam's meddling to Mrs. Putnam's envy that none of Rebecca Nurse's children have died. Mrs. Putnam, it mentioned that she had 8 kids in her lifetime, and only one of them survived, Ruth Putnam, who's also in a coma. So, and she blames Rebecca Nurse. Proctor doesn't like Paris because he has these fiery sermons, like John Edwards, who he just talks about the devil. Paris believes that he should be paid more. So there's this whole bunch of disputes between the town. We find out that this witchcraft stuff allows the town to start kind of arguing with each other. And remember all these things that they're arguing about, because it kind of plays a role later on. Because if you read the Salem witch trials, the article we provided, it showed that some people believe that it could have been real. It could have been just sickness, but the hatred that the town people had on each other, that plays a factor, because you see that people start blaming each other to take advantage of the situation. All right, so towards the end, Reverend Hale actually finds out about the dancing, and he questions the girls, right? He questions the girls, and they're yelling at them and says, "What did you do? What happened?" And the girls, they already started lying. So what they decide to do is they blame the only person that is powerless in the town so far. Well, in this time period, the women are powerless because it's a very religious town and very patriarchal. But they blame the slave, Tituba, right? They say, Tituba, it's her fault. She brought us out to the forest. She made us conjure spirits. So you see this trouble. Hale asks Abigail if she conjured the devil. Abigail says Tituba did it. As Mrs. Putnam goes to get Tituba, Hale asks Abigail several questions. Did she feel the devil's presence? Did she drink from the kettle? Did she sell herself to the devil? Abigail denies everything. As soon as Tituba enters, however, Abigail screams. Like, it's really dramatic. If you watch the movie, and I suggest you watch the movie, it gives you a visual of what happens, and you hate these characters, and it's well done. There's a scene like Reverend Hale, the guy on the far left, he's questioning Abigail. And remember, Abigail is this girl, she's the 17-year-old, she's in charge of the girls. Even though we know that they're faking, they say they're faking. As soon as Reverend Hale starts interrogating them, she screams, and she said, I didn't see the devil, but she sees Tituba and she sees a way out, and there's a key word we're going to learn, scapegoating. Have you guys heard of scapegoating before? Possibly, maybe not. So there's two famous examples of scapegoating. So one thing, during World War II, in the 1930s and 1940s, Germany had a lot of problems with money and economics and issues. And so the way Hitler came to power is he would blame the Jews, the people who are Jewish. He says, it's their fault that our country's like this, it's their fault that they're corrupting the town, and the people would believe it, and they would put all their hate on them. He used the Jewish people as scapegoats. Similar to right now in this time period, and I actually saw the hysteria that people put on their discussion posts. Donald Trump uses immigrants as a way of scapegoating. He says, what's wrong with our town? I blame the immigrants. I blame these people, right? So scapegoating is when you shift the blame to someone else to get yourself out of the hook and to get people angry about something. So Abigail does that to Tituba. And Tituba is powerless in the town because she is a slave. So they throw Tituba to the ground. Hale and Reverend Paris starts whipping her, and it's a very intense moment, right? And then Hale keeps asking Tituba, when did you see the devil? When did you see the devil? And they keep hitting her, and she's like, I've never seen the devil, and this never happened before. And they keep hitting her, and eventually, and he keeps saying, tell us when this happened and this will stop. And what do you guys think happened? If someone keeps hitting you and torturing you, eventually you will give in, right? You would. This is why they say torture doesn't work, because if someone's hurting you and saying, give us the answer, even though you know you don't have the answers, you give them something because you're in pain and you want it to stop. So they're whipping her and they're hurting her, and what happens is Tituba eventually says, yes, I saw the devil, right? And she starts lying, she starts making it up. And everyone's really shocked. All the girls were like, oh my God, we're just blaming Tetsuko for this problem, but she's actually admitting to something that didn't happen. And then so they stop hurting her, and then they start feeding her stuff like, who did you see? Like, who did you see with the devil? And then she says, did you see Goody Osborne? Goody in the play means Mrs. Like, did you see a Goody Nurse? Who did you see? Like, they start asking her questions, leading questions, right? It's like if like Jocelyn did something bad, and I try to get her to confess and be like, who did it? Did Alan do it? Did Gabriel do it? Right? But if you're feeding them the answers, you're kind of misleading the witnesses. Even in like a real interrogations, you're not allowed to feed them stuff like that, because you're giving them the answers of what to say. So eventually at the end of the play, she confesses. When I say confesses, we're not, she's kind of led to confess. The other option was her getting whipped and hanged to death. So she confesses to seeing witches. And all the girls, and you should watch this in the movie, all the girls go, yeah, I saw Goody Nurse, and they just start blaming a bunch of people for their problems. And that's how the play ends. And as the act ends and the screen is closing and the curtains are closing, you just see Tetsuba, and she has like this face like, oh my God, what did I just start? And from the beginning of Act 1, that's when the chaos starts. Okay, so let's go over the questions. And this is, if you have paper, use it. If not, get some paper. We'll go over some questions. So we're 20 questions, and I'm going to pick about 10 to 15 of them for a quiz, and you're going to have the weekend to finish it. It's going to be, you can start at your own time and your own pace. Let me get out the... Okay. So far, any questions? Did the first act make that sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Alright, there's a lot that happens. If you guys get a chance, on YouTube, you can find the movie. If you have, like, iTunes or anything, you guys can rent it for like $3, or Amazon or Hulu. But besides that... Yeah, okay, so let's go over this. So there's 20 questions that I wanted you guys to look at. Okay, so let me stop sharing real fast. Okay. The first question is, I need to look at this because I have different papers. Okay, the first question is, how does Paris try to convince his audience that the witchcraft is not the cause of Betty's condition? How does he use different appeals? So, throughout the thing, wait, hold up. So, how does Paris try to convince his audience that the witchcraft is not the cause of Betty's condition? How does he use the appeals? At the very beginning, he kind of just at the very beginning he says, no, she's just sick. He tries to pretend that the dancing didn't happen, so he was just deflecting. Yeah, so the key thing right there is, we're not going to emphasize which is how to use different appeals, but the key thing is he tries to convince the audience that the witchcraft is not the cause of Betty's condition by in the beginning, he kind of just said he blames Abigail. He knows that they were dancing, but he doesn't think of anything else. Number 2, examine how Abigail's claims change throughout the act. how does she adapt to her environment? What's her original claim? What are the incremental changes to this claim? So this is a very key thing because you learn about her character. So in the very beginning, as we talked about, Abigail denies conjuring experience. She says, nope, that did not happen. When she talks to Paris, she tells him that we're just dancing. She actually tells her uncle that she was just dancing. When she talks to John Proctor, she admits they're just fooling around, that it was just fun. And when she tells Hale, she says it was just common dancing. And then finally, she when they find out that they were kind of like messing around, and remember I told you she wanted Elizabeth Proctor dead. She mentions to Hale like what was there, and they find out that they were cooking something in this pot, like in the picture I showed you. And then after that, when she sees that she might get in trouble, she pushes the blame. She uses Tituba as a scapegoat. So in this very first act, she goes from denying that anything happened to saying they're just dancing, telling Paris that they're dancing. She told John Proctor they're dancing, and she told Hale they're dancing. But then she switches out and says, nope, Tituba, she's actually conjuring devils. So she switches, she lies. That's how she changes. So those are the things that switches between her. Question 3. Examine the language of Paris employs while speaking to Abigail, his niece. What does his language convey about his attitude towards Abigail, Betty, and the village? We learn a lot about Paris in the beginning. So at the very beginning, we find out that number one, he tries to get Abigail to do the right thing, to listen to him, to be loyal to him. We find out that Abigail is the niece of Paris. Her backstory is her parents got killed by Native Americans, and she's an orphan, so she lives with Paris. So Paris feels like, you get to be loyal to me because I'm taking care of you. And then we find out that Paris doesn't really like the town. He feels like they're not really giving him what they need. He's afraid that if they find out that Abigail is dancing, that there will be a faction in the town that want him out, because there's already people that don't like him. So he's afraid of the town and that they might remove him from office or from his position. So also he believes that there is in the play he asks, is her name White in the town? White, it means pure or clean, because there are rumors about her and John Proctor, but no one confirms it, so she kind of questions her. But we find out early on, the question is his attitude towards, he loves Betty, he feels that Abigail should be loyal to him because of this, and he feels bitter towards the town. Next question, question 4. Why do you think dancing in the forest at night is seen as scandalous? Scandalous is something that is not allowed in this town. So, different things. The perception of dancing as wild and to extent uncontrollable. With the strict laws governed by primitive society, dancing would appear to be against the rules. Dancing can be provoking. They think it's it's the Puritan culture. Not only that, but dancing seems like it's against Christianity, the religious, especially dancing in the forest. So that's like the key thing. It's just against the religion. They're very strict culture. If you look at the way they dress, look at the way they act, look at the way they talk, dancing isn't allowed. So 4, why do you think dancing in the forest at night is seen as scandalous in society? This is a very strict society, false and spiritual cultures. Number 5, scapegoating is, and we talked about this earlier, scapegoating is when someone places blame or fault on others for his or her mistakes. Like how I said, Hitler blames Jewish people for their problem in Germany, or Donald Trump blames immigrants for things that they really can't control, right? How do characters use Tituba as a scapegoat in act? How does Miller portrayal the scapegoat communicate a message of central idea about race, class, and society, who also acts as a scapegoat? So, what the characters do is, as soon as they feel themselves getting in trouble, they pretend that there was witchcraft and that Tituba was the problem. So they put all their blame on Tituba. This shows, number one, women have less power than men in society, right? Miller won't show that. But not only that, the person that has the least amount of power in society is Tituba, because she's not only is she a woman, but she is a black woman, so and a slave. So she doesn't have power. She can't really defend herself. So the way they do it is they blame her. They say that she was conjuring the devil and spirits, and she forced them. Abigail even says, like, there's times where she comes to my room and tries to get the devil to talk to me and stuff like that. We know that's a lie, but at this time, no one else does. 6. How do characters try to build their own credibility in the face of specific other characters? So there's different ways. Hale, Reverend Hale, when he comes, he explains to them that he has studied, has long studied witchcraft and the idea of hunting witches, and he sets himself up as a credible source. Rebecca Nurse, she explains to the Putnams that she should be listened to. So Rebecca Nurse actually believes that the girls are lying early on, but no one. And the reason why she says that is because she has 11 kids of her own and 26 grandchildren. The number doesn't matter. But Rebecca Nurse says, she looks at Betty and says, she's lying. Like, I know kids and I know she's lying. So, and she knows she's lying because she had a lot of grandkids and kids of her own. Reverend Hale also explains that he has knowledge in this because he's educated in these matters. So that's how characters set up their own credibility in the face of others. 7. Why do the Putnams jump to witchcraft? Hold on. Alright, sorry about that. Someone rang my doorbell and the dogs went crazy. Okay, so number 7. Why do the Putnams jump to witchcraft to explain Betty and Ruth's condition? So there's 2 girls that are sick, Betty Paris and Ruth Putnam. Why do they instantly jump to witchcraft? So the Putnams, they're actually they have a sad backstory. Yeah, as I said before, they had 8 kids, but all but one of them died. So what they're doing is shifting the blame. They're trying to blame other people, and specifically, they don't like Rebecca Nurse. They think that she's a problem. So they blame other people. By placing blame on the devil, both Mrs. and Mr. Putnam not only provide reasons for their offspring's untimely death, but also raise the status of the family whom the devil targets. So there's 2 reasons why. One, they're sad about their children have died. And number 2, it kind of shifts blame to people, saying they're not as religious and not holy as my family. So we'll see it as important because later on, you'll see that Thomas Putnam, he buys land of people that die, and he blames them. They buy land of people that die. 8. How does this act serve Miller's large criticism of McCarthyism? So we did a discussion post on McCarthyism. McCarthyism is when you blame people for things without evidence. We'll have a presentation next week on this, but when you blame people for things without evidence, um, during the 1950s, one during the 1950s, if you read the article, if you haven't, please do so. It's called Discussion Post Number 3. We find out about McCarthyism, and Joseph McCarthy, he's a senator from Wisconsin. He blames a bunch of people for accusing them of being communist. And if you're accused of being a communist, it's hard to fight back. So this is a criticism of witchcraft. Tituba is accused of being a witch and working with the devil. Her only options are to confess or get hung. Think about those two options. Either tell us you're working with the devil or we're going to whip you. If that was any of you, your options would probably be like, all right, well, I'm going to tell you what you guys want because I don't want to get hurt. So what you see is it's a criticism. It says people are willing to make up lies to save themselves, right? Because those are only two options. If you only give me an option of getting hurt or lying, I'm going to lie every single time. So he feels like the choices are kind of dumb. Arthur Miller is the author of the play. Number 9, examine how the word child is used. Who uses this word? How does this word help express certain attitudes towards other characters? This is during a very early exchange between John Proctor and Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams and John Proctor, when they're having that very intimate scene, John Proctor says he uses the word child on her, and she's really offended about this. She's like, "You don't call me child," and for good reason. She's like, "Was I a child when you're having an affair with me?" They're saying stuff like that, and he was like, "Don't get in the matter of things." So John Proctor calls child to Abigail, like she doesn't know anything, like she's immature, like she's a kid, and Abigail's offended by this. She was like, how can you call me a child and still basically hug and sleep with me and be like, and use me during last year when they're having that affair. All right, question 10. How does Miller characterize Rebecca Nurse? Examine her speech and her character. So Rebecca Nurse is, let me see, so I could share. Okay, so it might be hard for you to see the questions. So number 10, how does Miller characterize Rebecca Nurse? Rebecca Nurse is the voice of reason. She's a person that understands early on that the girls are lying. She says, I have kids. That person is clearly lying. Examine her speech and how the characters contrast. So her and Mrs. Putnam don't get along. Mrs. Putnam doesn't really have that many kids, so she doesn't understand the situation, and they have arguments. Actually, Mrs. Putnam blames Rebecca Nurse. And keep in mind, Rebecca Nurse is just her name. She's not actually a nurse. But she is a midwife. Midwife is someone that helps you. Back then, there weren't as much doctors, so even until the 1900s, when people gave birth to babies, the people would go to their house. So you would stay in your own home and have birth in your own home, and the doctor and the midwife will help you. So Rebecca's nurse's job was to help people when they're pregnant, and she'll kind of give them company when the time afterwards. So since Mrs. Putnam lost 7 out of 8 of her kids, she blames Rebecca Nurse. Rebecca Nurse is seen as the word foil means opposites. People that are opposites and foils are like Batman and Joker. Like Joker is chaotic, where Batman is order. He believes in rules. People that are foils can be let's see, Dory and Fresno, the main character of Finding Nemo. They're opposites because one's very serious and one's very Dory's very like airy and kind of just says things, forgetful. So foils like opposites, right? Characters are opposites. So Rebecca Nurse, the character, she and Miss Putnam are opposites because Rebecca Nurse is a voice of reason. People listen to her. Mrs. Putnam is more of a hysterical person. All right, question 11. What scandalous act was Mrs. Putnam a part of? What does this convey about her character, about Puritan society? Let me show this. So oh yeah, I remember that. So actually early on, I tell you, one of the things that bothers Mrs. Putnam is that she's missing. She wants more kids, but a lot of her kids die. And this time period, that's pretty common to die because there's a lot of sicknesses. Because in the 1600s, they're a colony in this new area. So Mrs. Putnam actually goes to Tituba a few times to ask her if she could conjure up, make a spell so her children come back. Right, her dead children, or make some spells so she can see her kids again. What does this convey about her character? That all she cares about is seeing her kids that have passed away, and about Puritan society. That's maybe not everyone is as religious as they think they are, but also at the same time they believe in spirits. They believe that these black arts are real. 12. What is John Proctor's Abigail towards? What is John Proctor's attitude towards Abigail? What is Abigail's attitude towards John? We talked about this in the overview, the summary. John still has some feelings for Abigail, but he knows that the affair is over with. He's trying to make things right with his wife. And he sees her, he uses the word child. He's like, you're kind of young, and that was just like a fling. Abigail, on the other hand, is in love with John, and that's going to be a major conflict in the story. He is in love with John Proctor. You can see early on, John Proctor calls her child, like, you guys are just fooling around. And Abigail, she says stuff like, give me a soft word. She still wants to be with him. And we find out in her conversation with the girls that she was dancing, and her goal was to put a spell on Elizabeth Proctor to get rid of her. So that's her attitude towards each other. John has some feelings towards her, but he's like, you're a kid. I'm over you. I'm done with you. And Abigail, on the other hand, is in love with John and would love to, be with him. 13. Who does Abigail want dead? What does this convey about her character? She wants Elizabeth Proctor dead. She believes that if John's wife was in the picture, she could easily step in and be the new Mrs. Proctor. So she wants the wife of John to be dead. What does this convey about her character? Well, it shows that she's kind of crazy, number one, that she's willing to do some extreme things. Even though the witchcraft was fake, they didn't actually do anything the night before, she believed that it was possible to get rid of Mrs. Proctor. 14. What is Proctor's attitude towards Paris? Why doesn't Proctor go to church? How does Proctor's and Rebecca's description of Paris' sermons connect to Jonathan Edwards' Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God? We'll talk about this. Proctor does not like Reverend Paris. It's not a secret. They're opposite sides of the town. Proctor believes that his sermons, his speeches during the church, are too fiery. And if you remember the speech I read from Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, it was the same thing. It was just all this talk about you're going to hell, the devil's here to kill you, and stuff like that. So he doesn't like that Paris's sermons are just full of just talks of going to hell and the devil. It's too fiery. And it relates to Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God because Jonathan Edwards, remember, if you use those 4 examples of images, he talks about how God's wrath is his anger, is like a bow and arrow is facing your heart, or God is holding you like a spider over this pit fire, or that God is like a dam, like his anger is gonna break this dam and wash over and flush away. So it's related because Paris is doing the same thing. He's trying to scare his people. 15. And examine the conflict between Mr. Putnam and Procter and Giles. How does this conflict contribute to Miller's larger purpose? So the key thing is Putnam, Procter, and Giles Corey, it's like a side character, they argue over lands. They want to buy up more lands because they are, richer people in town, and they don't. Procter and Giles are friends, and they don't like Putnam. Putnam wants to buy more lands. They have legal disputes, money disputes. How does this contribute to Miller's larger purpose? So it shows that a lot of what will happen in the play, the blaming and stuff like that, is going to be solely based on their like rivalry and hatred for each other. So they use their own revenge, their own hatred towards each other as revenge. Mr. Putnam, if you notice that he's going to blame certain people, and after those people are gotten rid of, he's going to buy their land. Kind of shows the larger purpose that Miller shows that some of the causes for the witchcraft, the Salem witch trials, is caused by personal vengeance. 16. Describe Reverend Hale's character. What is his attitude towards witchcraft, his abilities? Reverend Hale's character, even though he starts up the hysteria in the town, he is actually a good person. He believes that he wants to save the town from witchcraft. He believes he has the ability through his education to search out evil and witches in the town. His character is very knowledgeable. He believes in his cause, and he's there in his belief to do good. 17. Why does Tituba confess at the end of the act? Why do you think this domino effect that ensues occurs? So at the very end of Act 1, Tituba confesses to seeing witches, and after that, all the girls pretend that they saw these witches and all these things and different people. They can blame different people, they scapegoat people. Why do you think this happens? Well, the word scapegoat, they shift the blame. So they saw an opportunity for them to escape trouble, and instead of doing the right thing, instead of just admitting to their problems, they blame other people, and that's going to set off the play. That's going to set off real consequences. In the real life events of some witch trials, 20 people died and 200 people arrested. We're going to see that unfold in the next few chapters, or acts. So answer to number 17 is she confesses because that's her only way to save herself. Also, they're beating her at the time. That's the only way for them to stop hitting her. Those are only options. Number 18. How do the other characters view Tituba? Consider Mrs. Putnam, Abigail, Paris, and Hale. They see her as someone disposable. They see her as someone that they could use, someone that they. However, so Abigail see her as disposable. She blames her. She uses her as a scapegoat. Paris does the same thing. He knows that they're just dancing, but he's very mean to her. He actually whips her. He actually hits her and whips her in the play. You see it. Reverend Hale is actually very nice to her. He wants to go there and help her and save her. Mrs. Putnam, remember, she's crazy. She thinks that Tituba has powers to save her dead children. So there's 4 ways that we see them. Mrs. Putnam sees them as a way to save her dead children. Abigail sees her as someone to shift the blame to. Paris is just very dismissive, very mean to her, treats her like a slave, like a servant. And Reverend Hale, he's there to save her soul. He's a reverend as well. He believes that he's there to save her soul. All right, 19. Examine Hale's line of questioning with Tituba. what's the significance of this question? How does he manipulate language to achieve his purpose? So he kind of changed it. He makes it seem like he's helping her, but the way they're talking to her, they kind of feed her answers. Did you see these certain people? Did you see this? Did you see that? And so she doesn't really answer things. She just uses the questions to guide her answers, if that makes sense. So they'll be like, did you see this? She was like, oh yeah, I saw that. And he's like, oh, was Goody Nurse with them? She was like, yeah, Goody Nurse was with them. So she kind of just agrees to what they're saying. She doesn't come up with answers her own. 20, explain the escalation of events in the act. Why do the girls react the way they do? How do these actions contribute to one of Miller's overall purpose? So in the beginning, the girls are just dancing. They know they're just dancing, but because they feel like the town is getting angrier and they feel like they're going to get in trouble, they start shifting the blame and pretending that witchcraft was really happening in the town. So that's how things escalate from them just being dancing in the forest to now they're blaming people for witchcraft. Why do the girls react the way they do? Well, because they're nervous, they don't have power, and for the first time people are listening to them. How do these actions contribute to one of Miller's overall purposes? It shows that fear and hysteria can cause people to do dumb things and cause them to do crazy things that might affect and damage other people. All right, so those are the 20 questions. I'm going to publish this video. So what you need to do is make sure you have it all done. If you want to review the PowerPoint from today, you can by tonight and all throughout the whole weekend. So from Friday all the way to Sunday, there's gonna be a quiz open for you guys to complete. Just finish it, and then if you look on the same area that question, well, actually for question 1, let me show you. So if you were on Schoology, let's see. If you're on Schoology, let me get there. Okay, Schoology. To later on, if you guys submit the questions, you get extra credits. Remember, one of the questions is to use on your quiz after, and so you kind of understand what happened with the story. So if you need extra credit, the assignment is, oh, did I not set it up correctly? All right, I'll find a way I'll show you a way to, actually, it's lagging. All right, I'll show you a way to, oh, okay, it's working. Let's upload it. Act 1 questions. 10 points. So, assignments. So once again, it's extra credit for doing it. There's no real way for me to do it, but at the same time, it's useful. You can use on your quiz right now. The way you could submit it is, let me add this into this folder. So it's in Unit 4 under Discussion and Assignments. If you click on the assignment and if you're on your phone, there will be a button that says Submissions, and just take a picture of your that paper doing the questions. And I went over all the questions right now, so it should be pretty easy. And upload it, and you get points for doing that. Tonight, I'm going to put in Act 2 questions, and what you need to do is read Act 2 by next Thursday. So there's questions for Act 2, and you need to have that done by next Thursday. On Monday, I'm going to show you notes on McCarthyism and how that might relate to things in the past and who the author is, and you need to take notes on that because next week we're going to have a quiz on Act 2 and the author. So, yeah. Let me stop my... Do we have any questions? Jocelyn?
How can we watch like the movie of it?
The movie. So, all right. So I went to YouTube the other day. They used to have it on Netflix, which was cool, but now it's gone. What you can do, if you want to pay for it, you definitely can. But if you type Crucible movie, you can pay for it. But also, like people upload like a free version of it. Let me see if it works. So there's that way, like they do that. It's not the full screen. I see one over here. So the way to get rid of like the copyright rules is it's only in the corner and the rest of it they have to walk out. So that's one way to watch it on YouTube. I just type in the movie and you'll see it like here. You see a girl dancing, Reverend Hill. So that's an option. Yeah. Look at the first comments like, hey, who else is watching this? Because they didn't read. But that's one option of doing it. I highly recommend it because it is a play. And the point of the play is so you can see it visually. But I do want you to read still because there are differences. And when I do quizzes, I base it off of the play and not necessarily the book, not necessarily the movie. All right. Any questions? Raylene? Brenda? Angel?
No. Thank you.
All right. So
No questions.
by tonight, I'll post up Act 2 stuff. By next Thursday, you have to finish Act 2 and the new question. And the only thing you need to do immediately is to finish the quiz, and it'll open up by tomorrow. And you have Friday, Saturday, or Sunday to do it. And it'll be based off those questions. Okay. Also, you have to know characters. You remember last week we went over the main characters of the play. Know who those are. All right. With that said, I actually have a next class to get to, but it was good to see everyone. I'll see you guys on Monday. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.
Take care.